Okay, this video is to review the Autel Elite scan tool and show you the boot up speed and stuff of it on a 2003 Ford Explorer. Here's the J2534 device. It's a Bluetooth scan tool, so you just plug this into the OBD2 port and plug the scan tool. Well, you don't plug the scan tool in anything, it's just Bluetooth. So, without further ado, here's the peripherals on this thing. There's a power port, external programming port, I think that's for BMWs, a DIN cable, Ethernet port, a USB port with a really heavy-duty USB cable, bunch of indicator lights, and a little Bluetooth antenna. And I usually just set that up on the dash. And the scan tool. Alright, here we go. I'm going to fire this thing up. I'll give you a view of the peripherals first. A couple of USB 3 ports, an HDMI port, one labeled OTG, headphone, power, and a power button. And on the bottom is just the port for setting this thing into its dock station. The back has a nice fold-out bracket, which works really good for hanging it on the steering wheel. And it's got a pretty sorry camera, 8 megapixel in the back side, and it's got a front side camera too, and I think it's like 2 megapixels or something. It's not very good. So I'm going to turn this thing on here in a second, and we'll see how long it takes to boot up. And I'm going to start at on my phone at 55 seconds going now. So it's about 30 to 35 seconds. And she's ready to go. That beep was the Bluetooth connecting, so it's now wired up and ready to work. Alright, so go to diagnostics, VIN, auto detect. By the way, the computer in this 2003 Explorer is not very fast. It's not a very modern car, so it's not the quickest thing I've seen. Some of this waiting here, I don't really think this is so much the scan tool as it is the car. Okay, I'll just show you a couple of the features on this particular car. Programming, PMI modules. This thing for doing Fords and Chevrolets, you're going to be subscribing to the Ford and Chevrolet service and just using the J2534 device as a pass-through. I've used that so far on the a GM, and it worked just fine. Recognized the device and flashed the Camaro just fine. Here's a bunch of programmable parameters that don't require the Ford software. And some of them you click on and they say they don't work or whatever, and others do. Looks like all this stuff works pretty well. Okay, let me back out of there. PMI module. Ignition switch off. Okay. Ah, crap. I really didn't want to do that. Hopefully that didn't just screw me up. Let's make sure. Good. Okay. Diagnosis. I'll go ahead and do auto scan instead of picking just the PCM so you can see how long it takes to find all the modules in this particular car. Notice how it just skipped the tire pressure module. This car doesn't have that, and it pretty quickly just moved on. I don't like that it doesn't say, hey, here's the tire pressure module, and it's not on this car. It just deletes it when it finds that it's not there and moves on to the next one. I think that they would be better off showing it as potentially there, but not there on this car. So it found all the modules on this car, okay. Then you go up to, let's just say PCM. Read codes. Oops. No codes detected. Does the key on engine off and key on engine running self-tests too. They work like they're supposed to. Active test. Let's see here. All right, so there's all the different active tests you could maybe do. Let's try fuel pump with the key on engine off. You probably can't hear that on the video, but I can hear it clicking back there. The pump's running or not running. Anti-theft indicator lamp control. For that, you're going to need to be able to see the dash. And we'll turn it on. And I'll focus you on the dash when I turn it on. Okay, it's on. Maybe not. Did I hit the wrong button? Cool. I don't see any anti-theft indicators on the dash lighting up when I do that. That kind of sucks. Oh, I lied to you. The anti-theft indicator is up here. If I hit on, the red light on the dash comes on, but it's up by the AC vents. Off. There's an unknown button here. If I hit unknown, I have to hit on first and then unknown. And unknown doesn't seem to do anything. On, off, unknown, off, on, off. Okay, so it worked. It just wasn't on the dash like I thought, and I have no idea what unknown does. Apparently they don't either. But there's the unknown button. Let's see what other bi-directional stuff we can get into just real quick. Vapor management valve 1. This thing you can either look at data PIDs while you're turning something on bi-directionally or not. I guess I can go ahead and do that and try to find some evap PID to look at while I turn it on. So let's pick vent valve 1 and vent valve 2. Vapor management valve 1 and 2. I think those might actually be the same thing. Alright. Alright, so I'm going to turn this on and listen, see if I can hear any clicks of the solenoid. I do not hear the clicking of the solenoid, but to be honest, this solenoid's buried up underneath the car pretty good. I don't think from the driver's seat I could hear it anyway, and I do believe this works. I think I tried this already. Bunch of tranny shift solenoid stuff, pressure control solenoids, converter clutch solenoid, all the evap stuff, fuel pump, trans gear. This repeats as you keep switching from left to right. It rolls around the block and comes back to where it started again. EGR valve duty cycle. Let's play with that because I like hearing cars run rough. And let me monitor some EGR PIDs. These are all the different things you can monitor while you're doing the bidirectional control. And there's a lot. There's a lot of PIDs in this scan tool for sure. Alright, I think that's about it for the EGR related stuff. You know, I gotta be honest, this truck's running a little bit weird right now, and it doesn't normally do that. The fact that I'm in here poking around on the scan tool feels like it's making the truck not run right. Maybe I'll just leave that there for a second, and let's increase the EGR duty cycle. 10%, no change. 20%, no change. 30%, no change. 40%, it's definitely running really rough. And getting rougher as I go. That is 100% duty cycle on a fairly cold engine, and it is running rough, but not that rough. But it does sound like it's kind of cammed up. And you get out of it and immediately runs good again. Just for fun, let me go back into that. The engine's still warming up, so I don't know how much of an effect that has. I would have thought the EGR would have just made it run worse when it was cold. It's a little slow to respond to that when I add the 10%. Running fine. Fine. Running fine. And when I get into 40% or more, it runs rough. I'll try to go as fast as I can to 100. And it doesn't let me dial it in fast. It just kind of 10% at a time. That's a shame. It'd be nice to see if I could make it stall by increasing the valve duty cycle fast, but it seems like with this scan tool, there's all kinds of stuff there available to me. Whether it all works perfectly or not It's tough to say, but I'm not down on the scan tool. It's got a ton of capabilities for the price. We'll try one more too. Let's go for, there's idle air control motor 1 and 2. Let's just see what that does. 1, I'm going to pick out some PIDs. Sorry, the mosquitoes are eating me alive. It's really weird. It goes by, or it shows you the idle air control motor milliamps and then IAC duty cycle percentage. I'm at 52% now. Hit the up button, it jumps up 10% and the RPM followed immediately. %, puts me at about 1100. 82% about 1500. 92% about 1700. And 100% about 1800. And then you get out of it, it comes back to normal immediately, so that works well. I think for now that's enough bi-directional controls. Let's take a look at some live data. And everything is in alphabetic order. The downside of this is, like, if you pick several things and then you get out of this and come back to it, those things aren't picked anymore. You'll have to go through the whole list and pick your stuff out all over again. That needs work, Autel. The other thing that's not so good is when you look at certain things like fuel trims, you don't always have enough space on there to see which sensor you're looking at. So let me show you the oxygen sensor, for example. This is not a big deal. You can work around it. It's just annoying. So here's the O2s, heated O2 sensor. Sorry, the mosquitoes are like flooding me here. Heated O2 sensor. I know the first one I see is going to be Bank 1 Sensor 1, and it shows me a bunch of different stuff. Here's the lean rich evaluation. Here's the actual sensor voltage. And then you get into stuff like this. Heated O2, sensor heater B. And I can't tell what B is without, pulling up this button and then hitting the info button. And then it'll tell me at the top of the page, that's heated oxygen sensor heater, Bank 1 Sensor 1. Okay, so I can work around and get that data, but if they would just put B1, S1 on the main page, that would save me from having to hit the info button every time I want to see what a sensor does. So a lot of times you kind of guess which sensor it is based on, how high up or down the list it is. So that's kind of annoying. But, it works. So let's just select Bank 1, I guess that's sensor 1. And then, now look at this one. They labeled it differently. Bank 2 Sensor 1, and they labeled it right. So it's not consistent. So let's just look at those two real quick. You hit the little show button down here, and it shows you just the ones you selected. And boom, now we're looking at the two O2s. And sometimes there's multiple versions of the same PID. So, like, you'll see here that I'm looking at Bank 1 Sensor 1 and Bank 2 Sensor 1, and they don't look like the same nomenclature here, but that can sometimes depend on which parameter you pick. So now if I want to see graph, I just hit the graph button. Okay, now I'm looking at the graph, and I can even hit this weird button over here and merge these two together or whatever, which you can do if I mess around, but that doesn't seem to work very well. I don't find myself using it very often. For some reason on this particular truck, when you're in enhanced OEM mode, the O2 sensors read really slow. And when you're in generic OBD2, they read nice and fast like you'd expect them to for a 2003. But that was the same thing with my other scan tool too. So I think it's a truck issue, not really so much an issue with the scan tool. So maybe this isn't a good truck to show this off on. But let me just scroll you through the PIDs and you can see there's like over 100 PIDs here. And just for fun, we'll look at some trims. Mass airflow. They show you mass airflow in pounds per second. Autel, you need to fix that. It's pounds per minute or grams per second, but it's never pounds per second because all it's going to show you is useless information like 0.01 pounds per second. That's roughly 0.6 or 0.7 pounds a minute, but because you guys use the wrong engineering units, I can't tell that. And yes, you can change the engineering units to some degree. So if I go to that reading and hit the little scale button, it will flip it over to grams per second and it reads just fine in that. But there is no choice for pounds per minute. It's either pounds per second or grams per second. And nobody uses pounds per second because it's just not the right scale. So I can live with it, but it's annoying. I think as far as the parameters that you see here, it's got them all. And it takes a few seconds for each screen to update when you start rolling off the screen to new parameters. As you can see right now. And boom, there they pop up. But it does take a couple seconds for each screen you want to load. Short-term trim 1, short-term trim 2. Some of these parameters don't work right. Some of them have the scales off. It's not a perfect tool, but it has so much data that I can't fault it because they give you, I think, a lot more data than everybody else does. Here's an interesting example of something I don't like. And again, I'm not down on the scan tool. I just think it's imperfect. Tire revolutions per mile. It's cool that they show me that in the scan data. I don't think I've seen that in the scan data too often. So here it is at 706, and they got it labeled in red as if it's wrong because it falls outside of the 0 to 255 range that they think it should be in for revolutions per mile. But all revolutions per mile are in the 500 to 900 range. So their scale is wrong. It shouldn't say 255, it should say 1023. They're looking at a 10-bit conversion instead of an 8-bit in the add converter, and they don't have the scaling right there. Therefore, this shows up red when there's really nothing wrong with that. That's the factory setting for tire revolutions per mile. Trans fluid temp. Everything else seems to work really well. There's a few eccentricities about what data pops up, but for the most part, this stuff works good. And it's, I think, as fast as a 2003 Ford is going to allow. I don't think that there's a speed problem here with this tool. These mosquitoes are killing me. I think I'm going to end this video because of that. So you can get some idea what you're looking at, and if you scroll through it slower, a lot of this data will load up as fast as you can scroll. But if you scroll fast, it's only going to show you like, each 8 parameters after a few seconds. So hit show all, and there's all the different things that I had logged. So here I am. Oh, look at that. Long-term fuel trim 2 pulling 9%. Bank 1 pulling 8%. That's more than it was the other day at 6%. That's interesting. Short-term fuel trims are bobbling as normal. Overall, not a bad scan tool for the money.